Hi, Democrats. Today is Thursday, March 14th, and it's time for the Chair's Daily Live. And if it's Thursday, it's legislative update. And so we are joined today by Representative Mickey Dollens. Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Alicia.
How are you?
How you doing today?
I'm good. So this was another hectic week at the Capitol, right?
Well, we just finished up deadline week, so yeah, putting it lightly, it was definitely hectic. This is the first deadline week of the legislative session, which means that all bills have to be out of the respective chamber, whether or not they originated in the House or the Senate. Tonight at midnight, they have to be through. However, there's a lot of crazy things happening over in the Senate chamber right now. So the House actually gave them an extension until 5 a.m. this morning, which is probably pretty likely they're going to be in session into the early hours in the morning. But we can talk more about that in a moment if you'd like.
You know what? I think today I'd like to start off with some light news, some positive news, right? So like last week was the Oklahoma Advocacy for Children. I can't remember what the I stands for. Advocacy for Children Chili Cook-Off.
Yeah, the Oklahoma Institute of Child Advocacy, which is led by former Representative Joe Dorman. He's done such an awesome job with that organization, advocating for youth in this state. They have an annual fundraiser each year with a chili cook-off at the state capitol, and a lot of stakeholders, a lot of nonprofits and individuals get to participate in that, and they raise a bunch of money for a great cause. And was really excited to join and to participate. I ate about 4 bowls of chili right before I had to report back to the House floor and debate some bad bills. But I think the highlight of that was Sean Cummings won the Chili Cook-Off Championship with Kathy Cummings' chili recipe. And so it was a really meaningful, impactful day. And then it was really nice to have that chili. And it was so good. Sean, of course, is a professional cook, but with that recipe, he really knocked it out the park. And so that was a great, great day. And then today, in honor of Kathy Cummings, we actually just passed House Bill 3516, which is going to name a stretch of highway in Oklahoma after the late, great Kathy Cummings.
I think that's awesome. I want to, before we move on from the Cummings, which, it's a sad, that we lost Kathy at such a young age, but it's also great to watch what Sean is doing with her legacy.
You want to talk a little bit about what he's done?
Well, he's been traveling all over the state, settling children's lunch bills, which, for me is, again, another sad thing. Why are there such large children's lunch bills when other states provide free lunch? But Sean has traveled the state settling lunch bills, not just in urban districts, but also in rural districts. And I think that's an amazing way to celebrate the legacy of Kathy Cummings.
It really is. And for people who may be unfamiliar, a lot of people were sending flowers to Sean, and even toward the end when Kathy was here, and she asked, in lieu of flowers, send checks that we can donate to schools to forgive lunch debt. And as a result, now Sean's been able to crisscross the state, going from school to school, donating thousands upon thousands of dollars, thanks to generous donations from people in Oklahoma, to forgive student lunch debt across the state. And like you said, it's sad that there's so much lunch debt out there, but it's also a great tribute to the memory of Kathy Cummings, that so many children's lunch lunch debt's going to be forgiven in honor of her memory.
All righty. So I wanted to move on to what's happening in Garfield County up in Enid, Oklahoma. I don't know if you've had a chance, with being deadline week, to know what's going on up there. They've, and I don't think that I'm calling names, they've elected a white nationalist to the city council in Enid. They have evidence, right, of him being at the Charlottesville riot, the famous Jews will not replace us riot. He was an organizer for Oklahoma. He now serves on the city council. The Enid Social Justice Committee got together, got a petition together, got enough signatures so that they can recall him on the April 2nd ballot.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of the work they're doing, and I'm proud that it's reached nationwide. They were on NBC Nightly News last night, and they were on MSNBC today. And I just want to shout out and say, this is what happens when grassroots organizations get together. You know, a few determined folks can get together and make things happen. And I really wanted to talk about that as we talk about the ballot initiative we're trying to attack at the Capitol.
Yeah, that's a great point, and it really highlights the importance of direct democracy. There are three tools of direct democracy. At the state level, we have the ballot initiative process. We have the veto referendum, which can veto a bill signed into law by the governor. At the statewide level, we do not have the election recall, but as you mentioned, the municipality of Enid does have the election recall, and that is so important for when issues like this with the council member in Enid, when issues like that come up, the people of Oklahoma, the citizens, regular everyday people, have a pathway to correct mistakes that were made. In this case, electing someone who should not be serving the public. And they were able to use that form of direct democracy and recall this particular council member. And the city of Enid, is going to be better off for it. But the overall process of direct democracy is something that has been under attack in this state, especially over the past couple of years. And we just had a very contentious bill on the House floor that addressed that very issue.
So you want to talk about that? Let us know what's happening.
I would love to. Yeah, House Bill 1105 is a continuation of the attack on direct democracy. This particularly singles out the ballot initiative process. It would add a $1,000 filing fee to anyone who has an idea to get a state question on the ballot, so it's cost prohibitive. It adds 80 days to the challenge period, not only on the front end, but on the back end as well. Currently, we have a 10-day challenge period that has been proven effective and adequate. We just saw State Question 820 be challenged. Even the minimum wage question was challenged, and it went through the necessary process, and it worked out just fine. The sole intent of adding an extra 80 days on the front and back end is to delay and stall citizen-led ballot initiatives, particularly the minimum wage question, which is coming up. And then the third part of that would be requiring that each and every volunteer who wants to go petition for signatures has to undergo a $50 criminal background check and file it themselves with the Secretary of State. When I pressed to the author on this particular issue, I said, okay, if they pay the $50, they get the criminal background check, and it brings up a criminal history, what then? Are they prohibited from collecting signatures? The author acknowledged that no, that would be unconstitutional. So the sole purpose of adding a background check is to make it more burdensome for volunteers who want to go out and petition the government. This is an attack that we've seen in red states across the country. I think that this really started back in 2016 when the state legislature sent a House Joint Resolution, a state question to the people, asking if there should be a separation of church and state, and also if there should be the 10 Commandments presented at the state capitol. The people of Oklahoma overwhelmingly said no. And then in 2018, a group of grassroots people got together and passed State Question 788, medical marijuana, which really surprised a lot of Oklahomans, especially conservatives and members of the Republican legislature. And then in 2020, the power of the people came together again and passed Medicaid expansion, which resulted in 250,000 plus Oklahomans with health care insurance. And then they passed criminal justice reform. And then the real kicker came in 2022 when the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade and said this is a state issue. And as a result, the 26 states that have ballot initiatives, 7 of them put it to the vote of the people, and each of the 7 voted affirmatively that they wanted to keep their access to abortion, their bodily autonomy. They didn't want heavy-handed politicians in their doctor's offices. And this set off the alarms for conservative legislators across the country who want to dictate to the people what their political agenda is. And ever since then, you've seen just a rush of bills to limit the power of the people, to take away their freedoms, to make it extremely more difficult to petition the government. And it's not just minimum wage that is at question here or at risk. It's not just reproductive freedoms, but we're talking future ballot initiatives like campaign finance reform or ending gerrymandering or open primaries, ranked choice voting, which was banned on the House floor this week as well. So it really is an attack on direct democracy, which is one of the few tools that people in Oklahoma have to affect change and bypass a controlling legislature. So this bill 1105 is now on its way to the state Senate. And I've been encouraging people who have been following this and listening to call their state senator and express your concern and your disapproval, and ask if they vote no on House Bill 1105.
So let me ask something. As I was listening to you, now I knew they were attacking. I just didn't know to what extent. So what I heard you say is that they want to add challenge period at the front and the end. They want to add, would you say 80 days, something like that?
It's currently 10 days, and they want to extend that process to 90 days on the front end and back end. And so I was able to press the author enough to get him to drop the emergency amendment that would have made this go into effect practically immediately, which would have absolutely it would have made it impossible for the minimum wage question to make it on the November ballot. After some questioning and having it, thankfully, this is all live streamed, so transparency is a good thing. It resulted in the dropping of the amendment, but that doesn't mean it won't be put back on when it goes over to the Senate. So we really have to keep close eyes on this, and I promise you I will do that myself as well.
So my follow-up question, did they happen to add any time for signature collection?
That's a great question, Alicia, and I actually brought this point up during debate. The author kept talking about how big money is influencing state questions. And I said, well, big money influences a lot. There's corporations and there's PACs and there's, politics is big money, but it doesn't have to be big money in state questions. They've created a system in which big money is required because of the limited signature gathering window of just 90 days, which is the shortest period of any state that has a ballot initiative process. I debated that if they had heard my bill that would have expanded the signature gathering window from 90 days to 180 days, it would have given petitioners more opportunity to go out into rural Oklahoma to get signatures from our rural friends, and not just have to be where the most densely populated areas are. But addressing big money, it would have also given petitioners and organizers an opportunity to do more grassroots fundraising and be less reliant on out-of-state money, which is necessary in order to get out digital ads and commercials and literature, yard signs, everything that you need to run an effective campaign initiative, a state question initiative. It does require money, but they wouldn't be so hard-pressed on time in order to meet those deadlines. And unfortunately, that bill was not heard, but that was pretty much the author's main rebuttal against the current process, which is already difficult enough, was that it was big money and that this is somehow going to address it, which it won't. Unfortunately, it did pass overwhelmingly. Every single Democrat voted no. Only one Republican voted no on this bill. So it did pass overwhelmingly and is on its way to the Senate.
So I didn't watch today, or I haven't watched this week. Did anyone talk about the fact that right now, in the last legislative session and in this legislative session, that there are bills being circulated to undo the will of the people? There's the criminal justice reform bill of this cycle, and there's the cockfighting bill of the last cycle. Did that get brought up at all?
Yeah, and then there's also the bill that would undo the state question in 2016, where the people said they did not want their public tax dollars funding religious activities, and they continue to push the private religious schools that would be funded by taxpayer dollars. This affront, it comes down to controlling politicians wanting to dictate to the people what their agenda is and not listening to what the people have to say. It is extremely difficult. I mentioned that our 90-day window is very short. Did you know since statehood, only 23% of ballot initiatives proposed actually made the election? And out of those 23%, only 6% eventually were passed into law. So it's already adequately difficult. There's a lot of checks and balances on it. And unfortunately, this legislature not only wants to make that process more difficult, but focuses a lot of their time in trying to undo what the citizens of Oklahoma voted for. And this is something that is not just happening in Oklahoma, but in red states across the country.
So you breezed past the ranked choice voting ban, right? Oklahomans are clamoring for ranked choice voting, right? And I think that it would break us from this almost hopeless gridlock of bipartisanship.
We hear, we hear all the time the importance of local control, yet they continue to attack local control by, for example, prohibiting municipalities from setting their own minimum wage, and then also now prohibiting municipalities from trying out ranked choice voting, which is totally constitutional. It's within a municipality's purview. The Oklahoma Municipal League came out against this bill to ban ranked choice voting. And while our voting machines are not capable of accommodating RCV right now, the last time our voting machines were updated was 2012. Secretary Zirak said that they will have to be updated in 4 to 8 years. And every single one of the new voting machines would be able to accommodate ranked choice voting. So this is just another example of a controlling legislature wanting to dictate to the people what they can and can't do, especially at the local level. Independents should be really upset about this. And I know that voter registration for independents is on the rise. And a lot of them have expressed that they think that the two-party system is currently broken. And if they ever want a pathway forward into getting a shot for their independent candidates out there, they should be advocating for ranked choice voting and at least open primaries, because as it is right now, they would have no pathway forward. One of the things I like about ranked choice voting is it minimizes negative campaigning, and it encourages positive campaigning, and it encourages for candidates to talk more about their ideas and what they're for, as opposed to what they're against, and as opposed to attacking their opponents. With ranked choice voting, you would need to appeal to a broader electorate, so it would decrease on polarization, and I think it would bring forth better candidates who have better ideas.
Yeah, it feels like, it's all about control, and it's a little scary. If you have to hold on to control at that level, it's because you don't really know that you have it. That's just my editorial comment, which leads me to Superintendent of Public Instruction Walters.
That's right. We had, we just had these transparency awards come out, and Attorney General Gentner Drummond was awarded one of the most transparent and open elected officials. And on the other side of that coin, the least transparent and most secretive was Superintendent Ryan Walters. I was pleased to have passed a bill off the House floor that would require the State Department of Education, along with the other 9 top appropriated agencies in the state, to submit quarterly expenditure and disbursement reports to the state legislature so that we can have a better eye on the budget. I was challenged a little bit by this because each agency currently is required to report annually, and this would give us 3 times the transparency through quarterly reports. And I was asked if this was redundant, and I responded by, all you simply have to do is Google Oklahoma mismanagement of public funds, and you will get page after page after page of taxpayer dollars that were misspent by top-ranking public officials and state leaders. This has gone on way too long, especially in the State Department of Education, where we are learning that the state superintendent has used taxpayer dollars to fund a promotional tour for himself, to promote himself on these extreme right-wing conservative talk shows. And he dismisses it by, well, this is how I'm recruiting teachers to the state. I am looking forward to the legal opinion on this and seeing where it goes, because I would prefer that the state superintendent have to at least pay back the funds, or at least have some new legislation saying that you cannot use taxpayer dollars to promote yourself and fly out to New York to be on Fox and Friends and Newsmax and other divisive radio and TV shows. I think that the people of Oklahoma would agree. We'd be much better actually investing that into our classrooms and into getting actual meaningful legislation passed and reforms that would actually serve the kids of this state and not the state superintendent and his ambitious goals for himself.
Well, and if it were working, we wouldn't be sitting at a record number of emergency certified teachers at this moment.
Great point.
You know, one last bill I wanted to ask you about was House Bill 3598 about the officer body cams.
Yeah, that's a scary one too. Right now, over the past 10 years, we've had bipartisan legislation and statute and ensuring accountability and transparency when it comes to officer body cams and dashboard cameras in the law enforcement units or the cars. We heard a bill today that would pretty much undo the uniform transparency laws that we have across the state. This particular bill would allow each law enforcement agency across the state to come up with their own general guidelines, which is actually in the bill, on how they would and how they would review the footage before having to give a statement, before having to write a report. And the author said it's because they want better accuracy. And while I agree that accuracy is important, it's also important to have a firsthand account of what happened before the officers are allowed to review the process or the footage. And then the details can be ironed out with the district attorney and through the judicial system. We know that firsthand accounts aren't always 100% accurate, but that's okay. We want the lived experience from the officer, and then before they are able to corroborate with what is on the video footage. And also what's extremely concerning about this is you're going to have a patchwork of rules and laws across the state that dictate what is considered transparent and what's not. And there's going to be different standards to that, which could lead to a lot of ambiguity around transparency and openness, and is not only bad for citizens, but it's not good for law enforcement either.
Well, I think these kind of bills put law enforcement at risk. When the public doesn't trust law enforcement, I think that law enforcement isn't as safe. And this is coming from the daughter and sister of police officers. And so, you know, I want police officers to be safe, but I also want there to be transparency. And I'm just baffled to wonder what prompted the author to author this bill. This was a settled issue. And so this feels like it's rolling us back to a place that doesn't seem like it's in the best of public interest.
And I asked the author that exact question, and he said it's about local control. So on one hand, we support local control, and then on the next day, they are completely against it. But that's the justification that the author gave on allowing local law enforcement agencies to have differing guidelines around body cams it's a local control issue. The consistency is not there. And I think that's what's so frustrating to Oklahomans is that when it fits what their narrative wants it to be or their agenda, then in one case, on one day, local control can be a good thing. And then on the next day, it could be a bad thing. And I think the only thing that we're asking for in the legislature and Oklahomans in general is consistency.
Consistency. That's exactly right. As always, Mickey, you have been incredibly informative. I hope that folks who are watching this live and folks who come across it later study the legislature, follow the bills that they need to follow. And as a reminder, we need to be calling our representatives and our senators regarding House Bill 1105. That's the ballot initiative bill that they are trying to make easier to challenge, harder to collect signatures by adding a fee, right? And they're just trying to make it harder. They're trying to take away one of our opportunities for direct democracy, and we need to let our voices be heard at the Capitol. So please call your legislators about House Bill 1105.
That's right. And I'll be sure to keep you posted on all the Senate bills that are about to come over to the House and vice versa. We're going to see more bills that seek to undermine the ballot initiative process. And I'll be there to advocate and keep you all informed. Thank you so much for watching. Alicia, thank you so much for having me on. I always enjoy our Thursday chats.
I do too. Thank you so much. And you guys, I'll be back here tomorrow at 4:15. Have a good evening.